reports that they did, so that's why they're here. It is a special privilege, it's annual, so if we see loading docks, if we start seeing trucks and getting complaints that the trucks are parking in and blocking traffic, I know both operators, according to the packet, have said that will not happen. If it does, and we get complaints or pictures from residents or, proof that is happening, then I would suggest that we take action. I don't know if you could do it during that year and just say, you gotta get your park put out, but I would hope that the applicants could pledge that, we won't be, that the location is very critical because it's right by Capitol and Oakland, two of our main thoroughfares, and so my biggest concern is just that. It's just the deliveries and making sure the traffic can get by so they're not weaving in and out, people trying to get around. That to me would be dangerous in the location.
I'm a little unsure of how to vote on this. I do have a concern about congestion, general congestion in that area, particularly that part of Oakland. And I do think we wrote the policy specifically that we would look at each one individually because each one, there are individual issues with one block versus another block. And this particular block is in our busiest in terms of traffic numbers and one of our most congested areas. So I think it's a particularly poor location for any type of parklet, and certainly an extremely poor location for two parklets, especially because they go against, our 10% policy, which we put in place because we thought it would be kind of ridiculous to have parklet after parklet after parklet.
I don't agree.
Well, that's fine that you don't agree, but I have the floor. I'd like to continue obviously it's my opinion. I'm stating it. I'd like to have my time to make my comments without interruption, if that's okay. Thank you very much. The loading zone is an issue. I saw a big delivery truck, and I wrote you, it was on Oakland, it was on Olive, and the cab of it was past the crosswalk in Olive, and making it really dangerous, actually, for someone to try to peer around. If you could peer around the truck, you would have gotten, wiped out. So. And that's not the first time that I've seen, there is not a lot of space on Oakland for trucks, and I don't agree with the loading zone because the loading zone just takes away more parking. When we had a discussion last year on Draft and Vessels Parklet, we had other business owners complain that they need parking, and I know the businesses were notified, et cetera, but there are multiple uses for parking spots besides giving that public benefit to one particular business. There's loading zones, there's other businesses, there's people who are going to Wisconsin Vision and other businesses who need to park on that. There's just, it's a balance. It's a balance between granting an advantage to a business to be able to, make more revenue and create, some kind of community benefit, but there are negatives on the other side too. And, for me in particular, I think granting a second one, I just am not in favor of. But it then brings up issues of fairness to me because, well, just can't get to have one just because they were there first. And so I'm not quite sure how to reconcile those. Because I'm not sure, yes, they've already made the investment, but they just happen to get there first. I mean, maybe it's more fair to alternate and like this summer give it to the Broad House and next year let Camp have it, I don't know.
Is there a limit on the number of parklets that we can issue?
No, the board can, the village board may revise the number of parklets per block. It's in the policy, that's the village board's decision.
I think this block really presents a unique problem because you got like the businesses right on the Vision store. They have no parking on Capitol. All their parking is just along Oakland. And taking two spots out of that very small, tight area, I think it takes too much away from the businesses. Also, the businesses across the street are currently vacant.
Right.
And I think part of the issue with that is the lack of parking right in that extremely busy intersection for people to get to those businesses. And if we remove two more spots, I think it's just going to hamper the ability of those storefronts and the existing businesses to get people to stop, get out of their car, and get into the businesses. So for that reason, I'm not going to vote to approve the Broad House place because I think it's just such a busy spot. and the parking is so limited, and the businesses have such a challenge in that intersection.
I guess we had discussions about that block on Oakland Avenue when the policy was developed. It didn't restrict, we didn't say no.
Right, I asked.
It would have made sense at that time based on, during your comments, and I don't recall how we got to yes, or was it
It was
just
a
that?
2-1 vote.
Oh.
I voted against it.
Okay.
I wanted to restrict that block.
Public President Johnson? I just want to also offer this, that I know that we've heard a lot about this being a busy area, but one of the ways to traffic calm is to have more presence. And we're trying to be a much more environmental and socially, what do you call it, conscientious village. So one of the ways is that we have to be creative and perhaps calm the traffic by having more presence on the street. That includes bicycles, that includes parklets, et cetera. It might, I know this is speculative, just as the fears that I've also heard about what will happen if we agree on this parklet. But we have to, if we're going to be speculative about it, we may as well also look at the other side, that this could be a benefit to keeping traffic at bay at that very busy intersection where there are students crossing from, high school, et cetera.
What are the, go ahead. What are the, either restrictions or what's allowable for these businesses to utilize the parking lot in back of the old Syndex there?
So if I'm correct in my understanding of that agreement, there's 27 public parking spaces on the ground floor of that structure, and I think I have that in my memo. Yeah, there's 27 2-hour parking spaces in that structure, that's roughly.
And is it 2 hour even after 9 o'clock at night? Because, these two establishments, their primary business is probably gonna be, later in the evening.
The agreement definitely says 2-hour parking. I don't know if it's signed differently or not, I just have that agreement.
But we could change that. It's a municipal lot, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Correct, I mean, that's just how it initially was set up, was a 2-hour parking for those 27 stalls.
Is it a municipal lot or is it a private structure and we just have a developer agreement?
It is private.
Yeah.
It's privately owned that much, yeah, and we have,
And do we?
the agreement has 27
Yes,
stalls on the ground
and
floor.
do we do our permitting at night like we do in the Light Horse? So
Correct.
I think after a certain time, I believe
Yeah, I don't know if
that they turn into nighttime parking.
But that shouldn't affect the daytime businesses.
Right.
The nighttime usage shouldn't affect the daytime businesses, and that's the argument.
I believe all the ordinance on the 4th floor, or the
Yeah, I think
floor.
it's on the
I just didn't know.
top level.
I'm not sure we have signage on Oakland saying public parking this way.
Right, that would be
Take a look
good,
at it.
but it would also behoove the business owners to encourage their customers that there's,
Absolutely.
if that works, if what I'm saying is correct, then that we can legally do that.
Correct, I think that would be a creative, addition.
And I tend to want to, encourage the businesses to do stuff like this too. I'm cognizant of the fact that it's fairly close to Capitol, but it's not like it's right on Capitol. This is one of those things where we can give it a year. And I would think that the Broadhouse folks would have to know that there's a possibility that it could be a problem, and they wouldn't give it the second year if we were to.
An incentive to be good stewards to the community and encourage employees, et cetera.
Just something.
Yeah, I was always hoping that we wouldn't have to make a decision about this location and that somehow it would be, just very clear that we couldn't do it. We couldn't grant it, but I had the same concerns and it's hard to imagine like, oh, how's that gonna work? I made contact with the police chief and asked about, is there any indication of traffic stops or violations or safety concerns from their perspective, and he said not any different than any other park location. And I also asked if there's if there were, as far as the noise concern from the neighbors around the corner, if we've noticed any increase in noise complaints with the parklets coming out, and there's no indication that a parklet creates more noise for the neighbors. You know, the fact is we have outdoor seating and we have outdoor music that goes off at 10. And so I just wanted to share that. So that took care of two of my concerns that I had heard from the public. So I feel more comfortable supporting it now.
Two things. Because the committee and then the full board, the majority voted that it was not a location we wanted to ban. I don't think we can just because of the location. So, to uphold the board's decision on that, I think that that's something we probably shouldn't consider, because we've talked about it, and we decided at this location it's allowed. So the 10%, and again, the 10%, I told you the intent behind that it was a way to look at locations. It made its way in there, but to me it's very hard because of the lines. I would like to hear from the applicants, just to go on record to say about deliveries, and that, what so they know, so I have an understanding and they know that the deliveries will not stop traffic at that location.
Say name, address, anything like that?
Yeah.
Paul Hackbar, 3901 North Lake Drive, Shorewood, Shorewood, Wisconsin. So, there's just a couple things I want to address. One is the deliveries. Deliveries are going to happen regardless if a parklet is there or not. If there's not a parklet there, there's going to be cars there. And the majority of the people who park in front of Camp Bar are Walgreens customers. Or they're one of the 10 businesses that are in the building next door. Which, I'm friends with everybody, but a lot of times the finger gets pointed because we're the ones going for the parklet, which we're also, as business owners in this area, we're up against Estabrook. Estabrook absolutely decimates our business in the summer. So anything that we can do to get a little more green space, a little more something to draw people to sit outside is very, very helpful. In terms of deliveries, I would loop in things like trash pickup. Every business has trash pickup. These big trucks stop in the middle of the street and dump dumpsters all the way up and down Oakland Avenue. So I think I completely respect the decision to, or not a decision, but wanting to think about, deliveries and things like that. But deliveries, trash pickup, those are all things that are just part of doing business. And I know, like, the city of Wauwatosa, they limit the hours on trash pickup. That's something that we've dealt with at our Wauwatosa location. And if that's something that you think would be helpful looking into, it's great. And one thing that I brought up too is because we are primarily just a tavern, we don't have food deliveries. Our deliveries are for 1 hour every week on a Tuesday, between 2 and 3, which is very, very quiet. So from our standpoint, from the camp standpoint, I don't think we really have much of an impact from terms of deliveries. Now, I think encouraging people to take pictures of delivery trucks at 2 o'clock, or even bring that up, is going to encourage people just to go out and snap a quick picture between 2 and 3 and send them in. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think that's just starting another war. I think looking at the good that these things bring and seeing people out there with their families, with their strollers, with the kids and the dogs, and those are what we should be considering. I think deliveries and stuff, those are part of doing business, and it's no different than Pick and Save or anything. So, and also in terms of loading zones are awesome if they're regulated. The big problem is in front of School Rock there is a loading zone, but no one respects it. And if people park in there, they're never ticketed because you can't tell who's part of what, which is tough. Also, we have a loading zone in front of the atrium. We have people parking there all the time. I call the police, and they will not tow them. They will generally not ticket them, even though it's posted. This is a loading zone for this business. So I think if we look into the loading zone idea, we should definitely find a way to enforce the loading zones so people just don't park in them because they're a loading zone. And also the striping for the parking spots, I think it's a good idea to get rid of those because no one even parks in those spots. They all overlap. And our parklet actually only covers like 1.5 spots. So, because we're up to our driveway. So I think in terms of parking, we really only lose one spot by us. So, and I'm very happy to say I worked very tirelessly with Chris and Erica to help bring the parklets to Shorewood. I remember when I invited Chris down to our third ward location, we had a huge 90-foot parklet, and he was like, "What is that? That is so cool." And I worked hours upon hours with Erica Lang and with Chris to start to bring that. And I thought we were the first park in the village, and the quality and the design, and I thought we really set a precedent for everybody else. And I think that's something to consider too, especially with design review. Make sure they're all built to be like an extension of the business and to be very quality materials and look aesthetically pleasing. And look at the furniture and what people are putting out there. I think that's important to keep the image of the village. I know I'm talking too much, I'm sorry. But, it's an issue. I think parklets are great. I think they're an awesome addition to the community. And any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
And actually that input is, we need more of it.
Yeah, I know deliveries are tough, and it's just something that's part of doing business. And if there's a way to work with them, or you come up with ideas, or we can designate an area that's very heavily patrolled in the beginning so people get the point, I'm all for it. I think it'd be great, but the efficiency of getting them in and getting them out is what's important, so. Thank you, guys.
Is your parklet ADA compliant?
It is. It is. It's at the exact same height as the sidewalk.
Thank you. I think it's more of the paths in between tables, is what we were talking about in committee.
Yeah, it could be. And even if you set them up, people move.